So in March 2024, we created our first version of the personal passport, and we wanted to make sure this was actually something people needed and wanted. And so we tested it out in 3 different teams initially. This included a hostel in the single adult pathway, a women's refuge, and a women's domestic abuse navigator service. The co-production team carried out some peer research throughout this testing phase and interviewed both staff and people filling in and using the personal passport themselves. And over the next few slides are some quotes from all of the interviews and conversations we had. And we'd like you to have a read through of these in your own time, but we'd also encourage you to think about what might surprise you or resonate with you, and which of the bits of feedback you might want to discuss a little bit more with your team. So what you will have hopefully seen is that the personal passport doesn't just work on its own. It requires a certain approach and a way of working around it for it to work. And mostly it requires a trauma-informed and strengths-based approach and working with the principles of trust, choice, and safety. So what you might have seen in some of the feedback is that for some, the process of completing a personal passport can be really overwhelming and can potentially stir up feelings and emotions related to past or current experiences. The nature of the passport is so that people don't have to repeat difficult or traumatic experiences, but by filling in the personal passport, people may have to reflect on or even talk about those experiences. So this really reinforces the need for existing good relationships built on trust and consistency. And it's then even more important to work at the pace of the person completing the personal passport, always considering how appropriate and safe it might be to complete the personal passport. And so people should be encouraged and always told about and offered the personal passport, but never pressured into completing one. It also requires some trust from the people who are completing a personal passport and the people we're supporting, that their support workers and the system do care and do actually want to learn about them and read the personal passport. In completing it and in talking to people about this tool, it does require some acknowledging that people might be quite disillusioned by the system and distrust that the system does really care. This is often quite hard to control or disprove. If we share the personal passport, we can't always control how people will receive that, especially when the system is stretched. But we should always be encouraging people to see how important the personal passport is and encouraging services and staff to take it seriously and treat the information with care. Using the personal passport also requires some trust from services and staff that the people they're supporting can actually speak for themselves, and that information people want to include in the personal passport is really important to them at that point in time, and that it could change. It might seem like a bit of a shift to share power and give the people we're supporting some control over how they'd like to be viewed. But where there are questions or even concerns over what someone wants to include, workers should be having conversations with the people they're supporting. And this could be to seek clarity and to see how preferences can be met where it might be challenging to do so in that service. This is a learning and conversational exercise as much as it is just filling in a form. Services also need to be able to hold 2 bits of information at once, so both the client's perspective and the staff or service perspective, especially where there are discrepancies and differences. Both views are important and can be important, but it is always worth exploring why such differences might exist.